Hello and welcome back to the history of Gallifrey. Today we'll be going over the presidency of Romanadvoratrelunda II, better known simply as Romana. She held one of the longer presidencies in Gallifrey's history, rivaling even Rassilon, so it is of course full of events. But without wasting any more time, let's get into it. Romana II succeeded Flavia as Lady President after a coup overthrew Flavia's government. In year 6776.7 of the Rassilon era, Romana was on a routine visit to Etra Prime when it disappeared. She was imprisoned there by the Daleks for 20 years. During the ensuing caretaker presidency, the Sirens of Time manipulated 3 incarnations of the Doctor to alter history so the Knights of Velicia could conquer Gallifrey. With the aid of Temporal, the Doctors were able to correct the timeline. In year 6796.8 of the Rassilon era, the Sixth Doctor arrived on Archatrix during the Archatrix Convention. Coordinator Van Cell was at the convention, spying on the other Temporal Powers time machines. When Romana escaped the Daleks back to Gallifrey, they followed her and tricked Van Cell into allowing them access to the planet, thinking them to be a deposition from the Monan host. When on Gallifrey, they slaughtered the Chancellery Guard, as they needed to use the Eye of Harmony, which was key to the Doctor's companion Evelyn Smythe's retina scan, to restrict their movement, in order to stop the Apocalypse element's destruction of the Sirifia galaxy. This action wiped out the Dalek force on Gallifrey. During her presidency, the Temporal Powers and the Time Lords established greater relations thanks to more adventurous Gallifreyan students. Commended by Romana for their bravery, Gallifreyan students had started to study in new ways not outlined by the Great Curriculum. These same students also started sharing their knowledge with the other powers, with Van Cell even claiming the CIA was helping them. In truth, Van Cell wanted even stronger ties between Gallifrey and her allies, believing the Time Lords had held themselves back by not removing the aggressors and injustices of history. The Time Lords also agreed to the Act of Master Restitution with the Daleks, promising the return of the Master's remains on Skaro for a Dalek embassy on Gallifrey. She summoned the Doctor back to Gallifrey to give him a mission to Skaro. His TARDIS instead brought him to the house of Lungbarrow, where the Doctor discovered what had become of his cousin since his departure. When he failed to arrive, Romana and Dorothy McShane transducted to Gallifrey, but she was intercepted by the CIA. Believing Romana was off-world and neglecting her duties, CIA head of Allegiance Ferrain launched a military coup in Leela. After they were rescued by K9, Romana ordered Dorothy and Leela to find the Doctor. They helped him and some cousins escape Lungbarrow before it collapsed. Ferrain later agreed to stand down if Romana gave the Doctor the mission to Skaro. The Doctor set off, with his companion Chris Quedge deciding to stay on Gallifrey. Another account suggested the President gave the Doctor the mission to Skaro after he captured the 11 and had him imprisoned on Gallifrey, whereas other accounts held that she simply contacted the Doctor's TARDIS, or that Gallifrey was not involved in the Master's trial at all. When Leela's pregnancy ended the Pythia's curse, Romana negotiated peace with the Sisterhood of Khan and ended the long rift that existed between them and the Time Lords. According to the Book of Lies, within his tomb, Rassilon was upset by the return of life to Gallifrey, so he made a pact with Faction Paradox to fold the Doctor's life back upon itself and undo the changes. One incarnation of the Doctor, who existed at some point after the life of the Seventh, said that by his time Gallifrey had yet to repeal the first law of time. Later in the life of this incarnation, the planet was destroyed due to traumatic matters. As such, this future incarnation gave up his status as being part of his former identity's life cycle, so that a man in black could restore his homeworld, resulting in ensuing incarnations of the Doctor having no relation to the man who became known as simply Fred. Rassilon's spirit guided the amnesiac 8th Doctor to make small improvements to the web of time, after which Flavia was the current president, and the Doctor went to travel with Sam Jones rather than Grace Holloway. However, the 8th Doctor was later able to remember both Flavia and Romana as the current president, and he had memories of parents as well as being Loomborn. Later he discovered that Romana was the current president. The Doctor recruited Romana and her K9 to come with him to resolve a temporal discrepancy by finishing their adventure in Cambridge 1979, which had been erased by Barusa time-scooping them. He brought them back to Gallifrey afterwards, in time to deal with an incident caused by a vampire cult led by Handrel. On his travels, the 8th Doctor saved Charlotte Pollard on the R101. According to Romana and Vansell, this action wouldn't normally have changed the web of time, but the Never-Person Centrus used this event to break into the universe and cause an anti-time incursion which stretched the web to its limits. Vansell set the Matrix to remember the correct path of history. At this point, it was only predicting one future, Romana becoming the Imperiatrix. A fleet of TARDISes were dispatched to find the Doctor and Charlie, and it took many battle TARDISes for the CIA to capture the two, so Charlie could be used to enter the anti-time universe. Vansell thought that Rassilon was in this universe, and planned to bring him back. This was a ploy by Centrus, as the casket containing the supposed Rassilon was actually an anti-time bomb, which the Never People planned to detonate past the transaction barrier, as Gallifrey was the only place in the universe that hadn't been tainted by anti-time. The Doctor used his TARDIS to contain the explosion. Irving Braxiatel was tasked with tracking the remnants of the Doctor's TARDIS, and notified Romana when it disappeared 6 months later. She went with Leela into the Death Zone. After Leela had a dream where Rassilon seemingly communicated with her, they discovered a Matrix door to Rassilon's foundry, where they met the Doctor in the throes of an anti-time infection, calling himself Zagreus. Rassilon intended to use Zagreus to destroy the Divergence. However, Zagreus turned on him and cast him into the Divergent universe. Despite his infection eventually being stabilized by his TARDIS, the Doctor banished himself to the Divergent universe, which Romana believed he would never be able to return from. After the anti-time crisis, Romana discontinued the use of the oubliette of eternity, having discovered it sentenced victims to be the Never People. However, the new coordinator Narvin asked to use it one last time to erase Belascon. Whilst Narvin was coordinator, the Time Lords fell under the influence of the now, pan-dimensional parasites. Struggling to resist, Narvin orchestrated for the Unbound Doctor, who was currently travelling in space with Bernice Summerfield, to be brought back to Gallifrey in hopes of him finding a solution as the only unaffected Time Lord. After a failed attempt to capture them, the Time Lords caught up with this Doctor and Benny after he activated a signal device. On Gallifrey, the Doctor was placed on trial for existing, and appointed Benny his defender. Benny found the Time Lord's behaviour very odd, and Narvin discreetly aided her by directing her to the Archivist, who gave Benny enough knowledge about Gallifreyan law to find a way to transport him into the Matrix rather than being executed. He and Benny deduced the Now's influence, and devised a solution to force every Time Lord to regenerate with the Crown of Rassilon, though the Doctor backed down when he realised this would wipe out the entire species, and kill many Time Lords in the process. Narvin initiated the plan himself, to the pair's horror, and revealed his true intentions, earning a punch from Benny. The two then departed from Gallifrey. Soon after, on the planet Gryben, the Time Lords held a planet for unlicensed travel through the Time Vortex. The Free Time Movement obtained a Temonic fusion device, and planned to detonate it and destroy the Time Lords. Narvin sent Torvald and Leela there to discover its location. Whilst on this mission, it was discovered that the Monan host had agents on the planet, and if Narvin used the battle TARDISes in orbit to stop the escalating actions of the human Nepenthe, he would provoke a third space war. To counteract this, Romana headed to the planet knowing that if the TARDISes had to bomb it, they would kill their president as well. The fusion device was found to be a contrivance, as it jumped forward in time when the countdown finished instead of detonating, and there was no real threat. Narvin then initiated a presidential inquiry into Romana's actions. Leela was then sent to investigate a temporal summit to see if it was as neutral as it was supposed to be, considering the actions of the Architrix convention. There, Leela discovered that time was being rewritten to make the summit go smoothly. This removed the accidental death of an exotic dancer by the Nekistani ambassador Flinkstab, and the murder of the pool of Unvos. Leela told Romana of this, and she arrived to expose Hossack, as well as Narvin's actions after the Dalek attack on the Monan host world, as the Monan Vrel was committing acts of terrorism because of it. By now, Romana's inquiry was ready, and Inquisitor Prime Darkel was presenting the case for the prosecution. In obtaining evidence for his mistress, K9 Mark II accidentally set off a data bomb in the Matrix. It was extrapolated that Irving Braxiatel had intended to set it there to expose Glower and Narvin's Project Alpha. In discovering this information, Romana found that Braxiatel was transgressing the laws of time by conversing to his past and future selves in creating the Braxiatel collection. As Braxiatel did not recall actually having planted the bomb due to the project's discontinuing, Romana realised that history had been changed, and confirmed from Narvin that Alpha had stopped due to the Temonic fusion device disappearing. She and Braxiatel corrected history by travelling back in time and stopping the servitors stealing the device to deliver to Freetime, resulting in Project Alpha going ahead and destroying the planet Binyos, which was covered up by the High Council at the time and started Narvin's career in the CIA. The inquiry was abandoned by Darkel, as due to the temporal machinations, the device on Gryben had now been both fake and also real. Mephistopheles Arcadian invited Romana to France in 1939, as she would find something useful about the free time movement and the CIA agent Torvald. As she, Leela, Narvin and Torvald encountered Torvald's past self, it was revealed that Andred was not dead, and had been impersonating Torvald for months, as he could not account for the younger Torvald's actions. It was also discovered that Torvald had been behind the theft of the device, though he did not live to see the crisis he created. Romana decided to allow non-Gallifreyans to attend the Academy, much to the disdain of Darkel. It was at this time that an ancient evil from Gallifrey's past started to regain a presence by hijacking Narvin's brainwaves. As Leela was combing the catacombs after discovering that her husband was not dead, she encountered Pandora, Gallifrey's first Imperiatrix within the Matrix. Romana had encountered Pandora in her youth, and was given the Imperatrix imprimatur. Pandora wanted to make herself corporeal by taking over Romana's biodata. K9 managed to squeeze her back into the Matrix. Leela and Romana went to Davidia to recuperate, when a rogue TARDIS passed through the security barriers and a severely burned Time Lord came out. As his TARDIS was currently present on Gallifrey, it was assumed he had come from the future. On returning back to Gallifrey, Darkel manipulated the situation to put Castellan Winter, who was inexperienced, in charge of the investigation of the burnt Time Lord. She also persuaded Romana to allow Braxiatel to become Chancellor. Meanwhile, the student Gillestes tried to poison the water in the name of free time, though Andred stopped her. K9 analysed the poison and found it to be the Dogma virus. Pandora then invaded Winter's mind, which sent him mad, causing him to drink the virus vial and be shot by K9, making him become the burnt Time Lord he was investigating. Pandora managed to escape the Matrix using Braxiatel's ambition, but he stopped her. He had to be banished to stop her manifesting, as she was still in his mind, and Darkel had his chancellorship stripped from him. Leela then started teaching at the Academy as Braxiatel's last request. Here she taught about how to live within Time Lord society. With the new Chancellor Valles, Darkel proceeded to try and find any ways to get the alien students off the planet. In the process, she caused the death of Taylor Addison, who was trying to keep his friends together throughout this time. He discovered a chamber under the Panopticon and was killed trying to find its secrets. By this time, Romana was conversing with the future aspect of Pandora still in the Matrix, primarily through K9, to find a way to stop this insurrection. It was during one of these conversations she was briefly taken over by Pandora and killed Andred. Darkel openly challenged her presidency and started an election. After this challenge, there was an open terrorist attack on the Academy caused by Antimon. This gained Darkel many followers, and after a second bombing, a full High Council session was called to deal with the crisis, where Darkel intended to launch a coup. Guided by the future aspect of Pandora, Romana thought that the only answer was to declare herself the Imperatrix and become a dictator, letting Pandora possess K9 to find the Great Key. At the session, Romana saw off Darkel's coup, and Antimon revealed himself to be a free-time agent, and planned to kill the High Council, Romana, and Darkel. Romana had to free K9 of Pandora to allow him to stop the bombs, which Pandora demanded she connect to the Matrix first. In doing so, Romana allowed Pandora to manifest herself completely through her first incarnation. She claimed her title back and declared civil war. Pandora was supported by Darkel and Valles. Romana spent most of the civil war destroying infrastructure in the capital. On one such mission, she instructed Leela and Narvin to destroy the Artron Forum. After the failure of the mission, leaving Leela blind and Narvin severely injured, they fled to the Outlands and to the Anomaly Vaults to find a way to defeat Pandora. In the vaults, they discovered the CIA assassin Esino and became trapped within. They escaped via the use of Braxiatel's transmat that K9 gave Romana to the Academy. Pandora accelerated her attack by creating a technological variant of the Dogma virus. Darkel tried to trick Matthias into affecting Romana with the virus, but instead infected Halan. Romana then won the war by trapping Pandora in the Matrix and then wiping it clean. With the Matrix lost to them and the virus infecting systems across the capital, Gallifrey was prone to invasion. The Sunari, Nekastani, and Warpsmiths of Phaedon took advantage of this and invaded to emancipate their students. Romana was incapacitated due to her defeat of Pandora, and Valius became acting president and planned to resign so Darkel could take over. Matthias used this situation to become de facto vice president, and negotiated a peace settlement. There was a power struggle, and a presidential election was called, with Romana, Darkel, and Matthias contesting. Matthias found a loophole and got Romana's candidacy revoked, as she would have been impeached. Darkel also had Romana's presidency annulled up to the point of Pandora escaping from the Matrix. Because of this, Braxiatel returned to the planet as Chancellor and became president. Darkel tried to get him to lose control of the part of Pandora in his mind, which was successful and ultimately killed her. He then resigned and named Matthias as his successor. To gain capital for the planet, Matthias invited Mephistopheles Arcadian to the planet to sell off Pandora's temporal weaponry. Romana then started to investigate the Dogma virus infestation, and discovered that a large proportion of the population was infected and being contained in a zombified state. Elbon was trying to find a cure. As part of the bargain with Arcadian, Romana was sent with Elbon to deliver the weapons to the buyers, as they had the cure. Meanwhile, Leela and Narvin weren't sure about Arcadian, and chased him to the biodata archive, just when it was time-scooped by Braxiatel. He then asked for a decision on whether to use the cure for the virus, however it was taken out of his hands when Elbon seized it and ran for a TARDIS. He was shot by a servitor Braxiatel had set up to guard it from Arcadian, and regenerated into a zombie which dematerialized the TARDIS. Without a cure or a way home, Braxiatel left it up to Romana what they did now. Romana, Braxiatel, Narvin and Leela then went to the Axis to explore alternative Gallifreys for a better cure. In the meantime, the pandemic escalated when the contagious zombies escaped. Matthias ordered them quarantined in time-locked facilities. After this was carried out, he resigned as president and went into exile. Romana, Narvin and Leela returned to the main universe after a Dalek invasion of Gallifrey they settled on. On returning to a ruined Gallifrey, Romana encountered her next incarnation, who told her that they needed to rebuild, and transplanted her capital with the current one. Trying to keep the Eye of Harmony and Transduction barrier from destroying Gallifrey, she accidentally killed the Unvosi ambassador who came to the planet. When the balance between the Eye and the barrier became unstable, Romana managed to fix it, but the dimensional forces started her regeneration. This occurred within the Matrix. Romana returned to Gallifrey and discovered the state the virus had left the planet in. Having discovered a workable cure and now restored as president, she rewrote the biodata of the Time Lords and destroyed the virus. It was during this time that Slime, a Castellan from an alternative Gallifrey, opened the Matrix and allowed the Daleks to invade. Leela gave Romana a message from her future incarnation, saying that her plan was ready. She lured the Daleks into the Matrix and sealed herself in there, seemingly trapping herself. Narvin realised that Gallifrey would fall without her, and sent Valiers to meet the Fourth Doctor and order him to avert the creation of the Daleks, not knowing that the Romana trapped within the Matrix was actually an avatar. In doing so, Narvin accidentally started the last Great Time War. Valiers told the Doctor that the Time Lords had foreseen a future where the Daleks became the dominant life forms in the universe, and that they had brought him and his companions, Sarah Jane Smith and Harry Sullivan, to Skaro during the creation of the Daleks. He informed them that they had to stop Davros's experiments and gave them a time ring to escape. The Doctor was unable to stop the creation of the Daleks, but still changed history by forcing Davros to rush the creation. The Time Lords monitored the changes to history, with a few hundred worlds now saved from the Daleks, and supplied the Doctor with a replacement time ring after distortions from his alterations to history caused damage to it. Another account suggested that the mission had actually occurred earlier in Time Lord history, and that it had been Forain who met the Doctor on Skaro. As president, Romana deployed Leela as a Time Lord agent to investigate the time breaks in the 1890s, and someone impersonating her. She and Leela together investigated the Sirens of Time's meddling with Henlon's test flight, working with 9 incarnations of the Doctor to correct the timeline. An earthquake occurred during this time, causing Narvin and Leela to shelter in the house of Heershaven's cellar. In the original timeline, Romana boarded a malfunctioning Monan vessel on the edge of Gallifreyan space, the Moros, intending to regenerate to save its failing engines and prevent a diplomatic incident. Leela followed her, forcing Romana to transmat her to safety on Legion. Alone, Romana regenerated into her 3rd incarnation, saving the Moros. And that is how Romana's time as president went, perhaps the most eventful presidency second only to Rassilon's. If you thought her era was long, we haven't even started yet, as next we shall move on to the various time wars of Gallifrey went through, though for some not in full detail. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed them, make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below, as it really helps out the channel. This series in particular is quite a taxing one to make, especially these last two videos, which have been well close to 20 minutes and over it, but in the end it's all worth it. As always, thanks for watching.